Welcome. In this video I'm going to be replacing the rear shocks on this 2006 Honda Odyssey. So this procedure probably also pertains to other models of the Honda Odyssey. The shocks I'll be putting in are these Monro-matic Plus, model number 33194. And if you find this video helpful and you want to purchase some of these, I'll put a link to them in the description. And if you use that link, it helps me out a little bit and doesn't cost you anything extra. Okay, so I have this jacked up. If you look under the car between the rear wheels, there's a vertical piece of metal sticking out from the cross member. I put the jack under that, I lifted it up, then I put jack stands under the jack points on the right and left side. So there's a pinch weld under either side, and there's an area just a few inches long. It's pretty easy to identify. Put the jack stands in there. I let the jack down on the jack stands, and then I put just a little bit of tension on the jack. It's not actually doing any holding, but it's ready to go when I want to lift it up, and it just provides just one other tiny little level of support. But really, it's your jack stands that are doing all of the lifting. So now I need to take the wheels off. Now, if you have an impact wrench, you can take the lugs off. You can also put the parking brake on. If your parking brake doesn't work and you don't have an impact, you may need to break the lugs loose while it's on the ground. So a little tip for removing the rear wheel, I like to take the bottom lug nut out last. That way it doesn't kick out and bind. Now the lug nut is stuck on the socket. You can kind of bang this against the ground. You can also thread it back on a little bit and kind of knock it loose. Sometimes I'll loosen it a little bit and I'll just move this up and down if they're getting stuck easily. I'll tuck this wheel under the car out of the way. So here we can see the top of the shock. Before you loosen anything up, it's not a bad idea to compare it to the new shock and make sure you have the right model. It's not uncommon to get wrong auto parts. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to take the other wheel off. Before I do that, I'll spray a little penetrating oil on these bolts. And the other side is a nut, so I'll spray it on the outside. I'll also spray a little on the inside too. So I'm going to repeat this procedure on the other side. Next, I'm going to remove this nut and bolt. So you'll need a 14mm socket. You could use a ratchet or a breaker bar. I'm just going to be using an impact wrench. There was a lot of corrosion on that bolt. It did come off. I'll probably try and clean that up with a wire brush before I put it back on. Okay, so we have the top bolts out. I need to remove the bottom bolt. That's right here. It's a 17mm. Okay, so I got that off. So there's a washer on here, and you want the concave part in. So now let's try to pry this off. So that's coming off. I'll pry this out. And I'll get back to working on the bottom here. I'm going to try compressing this. Okay, I've compressed it all the way down. Should be able to get this off now. There we go. There's the old shock. It's pretty beat up. So here I have the new shock. I'm going to take this piece of twine and I'll put a loop in the end. Like so. I have a piece of cardboard on the ground. Now that's kind of important. This will slip if I do it on the concrete. I'm going to run the twine around the bottom and the top. You can't see that here. And I wish I'd made this a little bit longer, but that's fine. Now I want to say what I'm doing here. This is going to be compressed, so you want to be careful with it. But I'm going to press down on the shock, and I'll actually just grab this tube here and hold it down. It's all the way down. Take my twine. I have to move my hand out of the way. There we go. Going to run it over the top and through that loop. It might help to have two people to do this. Twine is going through the loop and coming back up. I'm going to press it down a little bit more. Okay, we have it around the bottom here and the top. So this will hold it in the compressed state while I install it. So this is definitely an opportunity to pinch your fingers if you're not careful. So I'm holding on that twine. I'm going to fish it through here. I'll place this over the stud on the bottom. And every time I switch hands, I'm going to make sure I'm holding onto that twine. Now I'm going to let this out and I'm going to twist it. So it can be a pain getting that shock in there fully extended, so having that cord around there makes it easy to manage. Now I need to jack this up a little bit. The jack is currently over here. I'm just going to use this quick grip clamp, slide this out. I'll put it on the other end, and there are many different brands and models of this type of clamp. I have this little point here. I'm going to stick the clamp in, and we'll clamp up with this, because we don't need a tremendous amount of force. Here's a view from further away, and here's the top. I'll crank that up a little bit. That's slightly twisted, I'll help it a little bit. Okay, so I'll thread that nut on there. Now the bolt hole's not quite lining up on the other side. It's a little hard to see here. So I'm going to lower the clamp just a little bit. Actually, we'll probably have to lower it and raise it again. Yep. This isn't sitting flat against the car, so I'm actually going to take some pliers and just kind of tilt it up a little bit. There we go. So you want to take your time with this, you don't want it cross-threaded. So now I'm going to take the impact and I'll just snug these down. And I'll torque these to 33 foot-pounds with my torque wrench. And those are good to go. So I'll let the pressure off my clamp. We're done under the car now. We'll put the washer back on, concave surface in. We have that 17mm nut. We'll put that on. We'll put the socket on here, make sure it's threaded. I'm just going to thread this by hand. And this will get torqued to 58 foot-pounds. Okay, so that's all torqued down. So the next step would be to put the wheel back on. These are alloy wheels. They torque to 94 foot-pounds. Jack the car back up, take the wheel stands out, jack the van back up, take the jack stands out, and then I would immediately go on a test drive. You want to check for any strange noises or anything. It's best to do it right after doing the service so you don't forget, and all the work you did is just fresh on your mind. So that's installing monro-matic plus shocks on a 2006 Honda Odyssey. This is pretty straightforward. You have easy access to all the bolts and nuts you have to take off. The tricky part can be getting the shock in there. I showed you a little tip using the rope. So that's all I'm going to cover in this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you like this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.